My name is Julie Pearson, Little Thunder. Today is Tuesday, January 26, 2016. I'm interviewing Bunky Echo-Hawk for the Oklahoma Native Artist Project, sponsored by the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at Oklahoma State University. We're at Pawnee, Oklahoma. Bunky, your Pawnee and Yakama. Your paintings, often done live, can be whimsical and fun, but they also pack a powerful political punch. You're known for working with youth, doing live painting. You've landed a contract with Nike, among others. And thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
Well, thank you.
Where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Toppenish, Washington, on the Yakama Reservation, where my mom's people are from, and didn't spend a lot of time there, but grew up in Colorado and Oklahoma. I think we lived here in Pawnee until I was in second grade, and then grew up in Colorado, the Lions, Boulder area. My dad was on staff at the Native American Rights Fund there, and at their headquarters. So kind of grew up in the halls of their law firm there. So.
Fun places.
Yeah.
The Echo-Hawk family is well known. Can you start us off by telling us just a bit about your father and his influence on you growing up?
Yeah. My dad. Is really well known in the legal community and in the academic community. He was one of the first Indian attorneys to graduate, through the federal Indian law program at University of New Mexico, and was instrumental in the beginning stages of the Native American Rights Fund, and kind of at the peak, I guess, of our civil rights movement in the 1970s, and so some of my earliest memories are being up in Colorado and spending the night in his law firm, and it was actually an old converted frat house on the University of Colorado campus, and it changed it, so it actually had bathrooms, showers, and bathtubs and stuff, and it was a fun place to grow up, but also grew up seeing, I guess, his caliber of friends up there as, tribal leaders that came through, civil rights leaders that, came through, and they'd stay at our house, and, members of the Native American community in the Denver metro area. And I was just, enamored with, my dad's lifestyle. He seemed like the coolest guy in the world, and people would, kind of gravitate toward him, and I didn't know what he did professionally as a little kid, because when he was at home, he was an artist. He did oil painting, and he used to tell stories to me, and he'd ask if I wanted an Indian story or a war story, and he'd use the pages of the newspaper when he got done, and he'd get a Sharpie out. And he'd tell me these stories, and they're always like family stories, or something relevant to our family and our culture. But as he was telling me the story, he was live illustrating on the pages of the newspapers, and it would make sound effects, and just made it come alive for me. And then when he got done, I would take the newspaper to my room and try to relive it and stuff. And so yeah, I grew up, and he always made a point to bring us back to Oklahoma, for our various ceremonial dances and funerals, stuff like that. And it always struck me, that my dad, to me, seemed like he, an artist and just a good Pawnee citizen first, and then once I got older, I found out all the stuff he's done, legally and in the world of law, and it just made me even more proud of him to know that. I don't know, because when you see people out away from the Native community and they're successful, oftentimes they're disconnected to their roots, and their heritage, and it always made me feel proud that my dad, made it a point to, keep us connected. And same thing with my mom. We'd go, living in Colorado, we'd go back and forth from Washington to Oklahoma, and But it really shaped me, seeing the work that my dad did artistically, because his focus in his paintings were on early reservation times for the Pawnee Nation, and he always said it was a time that wasn't talked about enough, and it wasn't written about enough, and it was something he felt compelled to share. I think he was kind of I don't know, just inspired by that time of transition, and so I learned a lot from him, and I'd bug him when he was trying to paint. I remember he took a 6-month sabbatical at one point, and he just spent the whole time painting, and it was in our sunroom, and it was like a sliding glass window, and he'd keep it shut, and when it was shut, we couldn't come in there, and but I'd stand at the glass and just watch him paint, and he'd sit there for hours, and then as soon as it was alright, I'd come in and I'd ask him about it, and he'd tell me, and it made me realize that the image on the canvas might be like, I'm trying to think, like one of them was a cow laying on the ground, butchered, and there's an Indian woman sitting on the ground with a butcher knife, and there's a little kid. He actually had me pose for the kid in the painting, and I got to stand there, and I felt really cool being a model, and, but when he told me about what the painting was about, and it was in the early reservation era, when we made the transition from hunting buffalo to being dependent on government rations, and when they when they distribute the rations for meat, they deliver a live cow, and it was up to the families to kill the cow and butcher it themselves, and so that's what the painting was about, and it really just blew me away and made me realize how different things are today as opposed to what our ancestors went through. And so once I got older, he really pushed me toward law school, and I was a nerd, a student athlete all the way through high school, and actually graduated from high school early, and my dad was always really trying to encourage me to go to law school, and he said, I'll help you out the best I can, and as long as you focus on political science and then go to law school, and I said, other than that, you can go to the Army, and so the first thing I did is I made an appointment with the Army recruiter. That was dead set against going to law school. And the funny thing about that was, so my dad and I have the same name, like the same exact name, because I'm actually Bunky or Walter Echo-Hawk the third, but my my grandpa passed away before I was born, so on paper they said I couldn't be the third, so I'm also junior, and so, but when I left or attended my appointment with the Army recruiter, and I sat in there for about 45 seconds and realized that wasn't for me, and I left, and the Army recruiter kept calling the house, and when I'd answer the phone, he'd say, let me speak to Walter Echo-Hawk. So I was like, oh, okay, and everyone knew me as Bunky, so
that was a good prank.
Call, I was like, Dad, you got a phone call, So my dad got mad, and he's like, what do you want with me? I'm too old for the Army.
Well, before we go too much further, let's backtrack a little. How about your mom's influence on you and possible artistic influence as well?
Yeah, my mom, she was also a huge influence on me. The art that she creates is traditional art, and she, like everything from beadwork to cradle boards and stuff like that, and I learned a lot from watching her work, and just kind of learned, if anything, to appreciate the amount of knowledge and patience it takes to do those projects, and it was a good balance seeing that traditional creation of art in our home mixed with my dad's oil painting, and then his professional world. I felt like it was a strong balance, and it's something I wanted to maintain, throughout my life is that strong sense of tradition, but also strong sense of professionalism and a strong sense of the contemporary art forms, and just seeing the work that my mom would do, blew me away. Like, she made a belt buckle for Alex English, who played with the Denver Nuggets, and he was at a fundraising event for the Native American Rights Fund, and it was one of my mom's favorite players, and so she was able to present him with that belt buckle, and it had the Denver Nuggets logo on it,
Cool.
And it had his initials and his number on it, and it blew me away because it was the first time that I'd ever seen our traditional art forms with a contemporary image on it, and it made me kind of open that door for me, like, that to me it was an important way of preserving a traditional art form, but being able to tell our story today. Because 150 years from now, if that belt buckle ends up in a museum, it'll truly tell the story of our lives today. And so it was really cool seeing that. And well, the best part about it is that I was so envious that whole time when she was making that belt buckle, and because I was a Nuggets fan, and I was a little guy, and I was into basketball, and after she had presented it to him, she surprised me, and she made one for me as well, and had my initials on it, and so it made me happy, But so it was cool, There's always that balance, of our not just the art forms, I guess, but also the different tribal cultures, and there's a lot of similarities between my mom's tribe and my dad's tribe. And then there are a lot of differences, and it was cool learning kind of both sides of, where I come from, and seeing that duality kind of play out in a daily life. And so I think it was pretty cool. Felt really fortunate in that, that they found each other, because I think they complement each other really well on a lot of different levels. And yeah, it was good.
So how about your first memories of doing art?
I think my first memories are my dad was gone on a trip, and I found his Sharpies, and took the newspaper, and I started drawing, trying to do what he did for me, for myself. And I started drawing I was really into the Dukes of Hazzard back then, and so I was drawing an episode where the Dukes of Hazzard, came in their orange car, the General Lee. They came to Pawnee, Oklahoma, and were getting chased by the BIA cops, and eluding them and stuff. And I used to try to write. I guess I don't remember that as much, but my dad's brother, Roger Echo-Hawk, my uncle Roger, kept some of that stuff, and published it in some, I can't even remember what, it was like some publication, but I was, I think 5 or 6, and he'd published it with some of my drawings, and some of my story. And when I look at it now, it's embarrassing, because it was just like a bunch of, it looked like tallies,
cartoon.
Yeah. But so that's, I think, my first first experience with that, was wanting to do that.
What about primary school or elementary school? What were your art experiences?
In school, it wasn't. I didn't really. I had an art class when I was in public school, and it was just real basic. Didn't get into anything kind of meaty.
Was it in Boulder? It
was in Lyons.
In Lyons.
Yeah, it was Lyons
Oh, yeah.
High School, and I was actually playing basketball, and ended up walking off the team in my junior year because I wanted to focus more on my academics, and I started feeling pressure of college at that point, and there was a interest in going to or getting an athletic scholarship at a few different colleges, and I didn't want to try to hang my future on hopes of a basketball scholarship, and so I ended up just walking off the team, and everything kind of unraveled. It's a small school, and ended up transferring to a alternative private school in Boulder, and that was an amazing experience. It was a school that was based on the arts, and so when I went there, it really unlocked a lot of doors, and like the art classes just got really amplified, and I took a couple semesters of illustration, and which really taught me a lot. And but my professor, my teacher there, my art teacher, was an amazing guy, and he, I was trying to draw. I was like really into punk rock and stuff, and skateboarding and all that. But he would always try to tell me, he's like, bring this back to your culture, because that's who you are, and he wasn't native at all, but he understood, and I really owe a lot to him, for that, because he was always saying, you can do your skulls and like all your punk stuff, but make it Indian, because that's who you are, you're Indian and you're doing that. So the very first painting I did is on a leather jacket and I actually have it too. It's a like punk rock jacket, it's all painted up. But I did a portrait on the back of it of one of our Pawnee scouts named White Horse, and so he was like encouraging. He actually gave me a longhorn steer skull as a art project to paint, traditionally. And then when I was graduating, he actually gave me an eagle feather, and he said, I'm not supposed to have this, I'm a white guy, but it came to me a long time ago, and I wanted to pass it on to you. And it meant a lot to me, because I knew, I grew up, since I could walk, dancing, and in our arena at our ceremonies and stuff. And so it really, I took it to heart, and I actually, still have that feather, and it's a prominent fixture in my life. But yeah, so it was, pretty much that was the schooling I had as far as art is concerned. And I had some really amazing English comp classes in that school as well that really inspired me to to write poetry and write plays and stuff. So it was just an amazing end to my high school, I guess, education.
So you hadn't really been too super focused on art. It was just part of self-expression, and you were and then that experience at school really boosted it up.
Yeah, and it was like a kind of a dark period in my life. As a lot of it was teenage angst, and I don't know, just a couple other issues and stuff. But I was in a dark place, and then a major transition from going from the basketball or the athletic world in high school, and then having to transfer schools and like losing a lot of friends and stuff like that. But when that world opened to me, that world of expression, I feel like it really saved my life, and it kind of put me on the direction that I'm still on today. So it was good.
So you explained that at one point you were going to sign up for the Army, but you quickly decided that wasn't for you. How did you end up at the Institute of American Indian Art, or what happened after that when you were not wanting to go to law school but not wanting to go to the Army?
Right. Well, I was lucky enough. My dad and mom, knew that that college was coming up. So I think even as early as my sophomore year, we'd go on road trips and we'd check out different places, and they'd, we checked out Haskell Indian College or Haskell Nations Indian University up in Lawrence, Kansas, and then Fort Lewis College in Durango, and then anyways, when I was filling out my applications, I decided against Haskell. I got accepted, but I didn't want to go there, and didn't really care for Durango as much. And then the institute just seemed like the best choice for me, because it was it would help me with the passion that I had at the time, which was writing and painting. And but I graduated from high school early, so I had 8 months to kill before I went to college. And so I had a construction job, and then actually I can't remember how it worked out, but I ended up taken a job at the American Indian Science and Engineering Society in Boulder, and worked as an illustrator. And I thought it was going to be a real easy job, just drawing pictures for a living. But they had me handed me a stack of files, and it was they wanted me to illustrate these educational brochures and pamphlets on fetal alcohol syndrome and fetal alcohol effects. And so I had to study all these gruesome cases, and then I had to illustrate it, try to convince people or teach people what it was about, and hopefully steer them clear of that. So it kind of helped me. I think that planted a seed that I could use my art as a way to try to empower our people or help our people. Because before that, I was doing like historic paintings or kind of romanticized art, like beads and feathers and buffalo skulls and stuff like that. And so it kind of helped I think unlock that door. So when I got to Santa Fe, I kind of had an idea of like the direction I wanted to go. And I was a English major, creative writing major there, and did painting on my own. I couldn't double major because they blocked the classes at the same exact time, which was a bummer to me. But I had my own studio space there, and the professors there still gave me guidance and critiques, and some of them I didn't like the critiques I got, but yeah, so it was an amazing experience that I.
Who were some of the outstanding professors and maybe even students that were sort of influential?
Man, there's quite a few, like in the as far as poetry, John Davis was was a real standout professor. Arthur Z, and then in the theater aspect, which I was primarily focused on, William Yellow Robe was a strong professor and ally, good friend, and then Bruce King was another one that I learned a lot from, as far as he was teaching acting, so I got to learn a lot from him, and there's a lot of people that I fellow students that really stand out, and from that time period, and some of them are still continuing on in their craft, and some went different directions, but it's really cool to see them.
Is that when you sort of experimented with playwriting too?
Yeah.
That's how I first heard your name, actually.
Oh, right.
It's a native theater.
Yeah, and the institute was amazing because they'd focus on student development. The classes were really small, like a handful of students, maybe a dozen at the most, and so they would not only teach you how to write, and how to edit your own work and everything, but they also looked for opportunities outside of the school. So like in my poetry classes, we'd learn like the writing and editing, and then the performance of it. And then they'd also taught us how to submit our work for publications and that process. So we'd actually, as part of the classwork, is we'd actually have to submit our work for publication. But then they also, hooked up poetry readings for us. So we'd go out into, we went to the Santa Fe Indian School and read for like the high school kids, and then on the radio stations and different places like that. And so in the playwriting classes, we developed our plays, and then once on the higher tiered classes, we'd submitted them to different theaters, and I know there's a handful of us got selected to go out to New York City and work out there and develop our plays. We had some cold stage readings of our scripts, and to develop them, and then we were trying to get them picked up for production out there. So it was an amazing experience. I got to go out there and do, like long distance, learning. And
Was this with the American Indian House in New York, or?
there was a production company called Chuka Locali, and they did stuff at the community house there.
Yeah.
But where we were set up was at the Joseph Papp's Public Theater. That's where they do the Shakespeare Festival out of. And so Irene Bedard was actually played the lead in my play, and it was
wow.
a lot. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was cool because when I flew out there, somebody had left a People magazine on the plane, and then it was like 50 most beautiful people, and I was like really looking through it, and then Irene Bedard was in there, so I was like, oh my goodness, and I was like, that's really cool. There's a native woman in here, and when we got established and set up, and then met the cast of who was going to be helping us develop our work, and she was there. I was just blown away. I was kind of starstruck, and so I had her sign it for me. But yeah, it was a really great experience, out there, and I'd had some competitive submissions. I'm trying to remember, like the New York Ensemble Studio Theater, and I got beat out by Steve Martin. His his play got selected over mine. Yeah. But I kind of then after that experience, I shopped my play around, and it got picked up. I think actually in Durango. There was a production of the play that I developed out there, and it was a play called The Essence, and it was about a half Pawnee, half white teenage girl that was her didn't know her father, her Pawnee father, and ended up getting mixed up with these New Agers, and as she was trying to find bits and pieces of her roots, or what she thought was her heritage, and so it was kind of a drama comedy, I guess. And so we actually did a staged reading in Santa Fe, and in Santa Fe there's a kind of a New Age community there, and so at the opening night it was kind of mixed feelings from the audience. It was a fun experience for sure.
Well, when did you what was sort of a landmark, I guess, event that kind of pointed you more in the direction of your painting?
And it's pretty, I think, like right toward the end of my second year at IAI, I had uncovered, and I don't know if this is too personal or not, but I had uncovered like memories from when I was a little kid, and I was sexually abused by an older cousin of mine, and those I'd flooded those memories or buried them, and they came out like right at the end of my right before I was set to graduate, and I think. I struggled with that, and when I barely graduated, and like I was on the president's list and honors list the whole time, and till that last semester, and I think that those feelings of like all those memories and the feelings that came out from that, like I associated them with writing, like those emotions and like trying to write, like so. I took a break, from writing, and went on and to the University of Colorado, and was trying to take care of like prerequisite stuff that I didn't do at the institute, and I ended up just then I turned 21 and ended up like not doing anything for a couple of years, which is embarrassing to admit, but real, and I was at the bars a lot, just had a manual labor job, and then I don't know, something about still having those unresolved feelings. I started painting kind of abstract, just expressionist, I guess. And I was really influenced by Myrick Creeping Bear's work, and you know, how he brought the spirituality of, you know, his people into his work, and it was, you know, seamless, and it made sense to me. And at that same time, I was really into Vasily Kandinsky and, you know, his color theory and his work, and so I started experimenting with, you know, telling my story. I was also at that time, you know, not ready to really talk about my experiences as a kid, you know, and so I did it through like hidden messages in my art, and I did a whole series of them, and a lot of my friends really loved it. So, you know, I'd give those paintings away to, you know, my friends, and it felt like a way to heal some level, you know.
Mm-hmm. And that might have been one of your first series, I guess, because you do a lot of your work in series. And
yeah, it definitely was, you know, and it was, and then the very last painting I did in that series, I worked on it for 8 months, and it was just called "We Got the Vibe," but it was, you know, this piece, and it was like really vibrant colors, and I think I was, you know, hiding my emotions with the, you know, bright, like kind of warm colors, but it was, you know, this painting that had like 100 faces in it, you know, like kind of mixed, and, you know, salmon, and I was trying to connect with my spiritual health, I guess. And at that same time too, I was really getting into singing a lot more, you know, with the you know, travel with my dad quite a bit, and, you know, starting to transition away from like powwow singing, you know, which is really commercialized, to learning our traditional ceremonial, you know, songs. And so I think that last painting kind of helped me transition out of that dark space I was in, and kind of to heal. And I did kind of at the same time, in that 8-month period on that last piece, I'd done a painting that was like, I think 12 feet wide, and it was maybe a foot high, and it was I don't know, it was called Under the Bed, and it was about my experience as a child, and it had you know, my face in there twice. I had like the left side of my face and the right side of my face, and then everything that happened in between. And I felt like that was my way of kind of closing the door on that and moving on, you know. And, but I realized still, I'm, you know, as, you know, what is it, like 15 years later, I'm still, you know, exploring what that means to me, you know, and it means something different to me now than it did back then, you know. And I guess it's, you know, still healing from, you know, from those things, but yeah, you know, that painting, that series was huge in helping me to move away from that, or at least start on that journey of you know, healing, and you know, finding my identity again, I guess. And then you know, I took a break from painting and, you know, from writing and stuff for a couple of years, you know, and then I actually had a back injury, and it was like 2000, and herniated 2 discs in my lower back, and it was a, you know, horrible experience, you know, and I was you know, having to, it was like physical therapy, you know, 3 times a week, and, you know, learning to walk and deal with the pain. It's like a permanent condition, and but in those first, was it 8-9 months, I couldn't leave the house or, you know, anything, and so once I could finally sit up, I started painting again, but I started doing it from a different perspective. Instead of it being an emotional, or, you know, a primarily emotional outlet, I started doing research, and the first series that came out of that was my Gas Mask as Medicine series, and I was studying you know, environmental injustice in Indian country, environmental racism, and you know, did a lot of research and sketches, and kind of came up with like 25 paintings that I wanted to do, and then laid it out, and, you know, did them, and then I had you know, started exhibiting that as a body of work, you know, because I thought, you know, one painting here or there wouldn't tell the story, so I was really drawn to working in a body of work, you know.
Right, makes
Yeah.
really amplifies the power of it. So where did you, what was one of the more important venues that you showed that series in?
That series, I think, was my first legitimate, like I had stuff in like a coffee house, and they actually made me take down the work because it was too controversial. Like there's some people that like got into a fight about it, like sparked from a conversation about.
That's a compliment.
I thought so, but they thought it was too much of a liability. But the first show I had was a solo exhibition at the Ellen Catherine Gallery in Boulder, and it was she was, you know, I think pretty young, like just not too far out of college, and somehow had a prime gallery spot like in downtown Boulder, you know, and, but it really inspired me to, you know, have these paintings and then all together, and you know, it was a beautiful spot, and you know, it was pretty well received, and you know, sold a few paintings, and but it really just inspired me to continue on, you know, so you know, I didn't want that to be the highlight of my career, you know, and so it made me automatically think of, you know, what to do next. But also at that same time, you know, I started you know, the website, and you know, started showing my work, you know, online, and then donated a couple pieces to, you know, some nonprofits, and so slowly my work started, I don't know, getting out there and getting known, and those paintings started getting picked up in publications as, you know, illustrations, and I think one of them that was really I'm really proud of still today is the Native American Rights Fund used that series to illustrate their annual report, which went out to all their, you know, their funders and supporters and all that. And the story that sticks with me out of that is that I think it was my dad had went up to Montana to visit a tribal judge up there, and went to their home, and on his coffee table he had taken apart that annual report and made a collage and then put glass over it, and he said it was his way of, or like a visual reminder to, you know, these are the issues, or this is why we're fighting the good fight, you know. And so he said that, you know, anybody he invites up, they sit across my table and they're forced to see those images, and so it really, I don't know, kind of bolstered my, you know, ambition, and made me realize that, you know, art could be used in a powerful way, you know, to make a statement. So it kind of, you know, built like that, and started getting, you know, like some, you know, book covers and stuff like that, and then, you know, doors just started opening. And I remember I made a couple trips before that time, and I think kind of right after that time brought my portfolio down to Santa Fe, and visited like 30 galleries in Santa Fe, and then got turned down by every single one of them. And they said there were two sentiments. One was my artwork was not Indian enough, and the other sentiment is that it was too Indian, you know, and there was no in between. I guess the in between would be like, you know, cocopellis and coyotes and stuff, and or pastels. And so I kind of decided early on that, you know, Santa Fe wasn't for me, like that traditional Indian art market wasn't for me. And I was kind of jaded a bit, so I wanted to circumvent that and just do my own thing and blaze my own trail. And, so that's kind of what I had the chip on my shoulder, you know, so I made it work for me.
Just real quick for fun, do you mind telling us what the image was in the coffee house that spurred so much controversy?
You know, I'm trying. To this day, I'm not sure which one it was. It was, it might have been a you know, combination of the imagery. But what I was told is that it was a conflict between like a younger, like liberal college student. They said he was a young hippie college student, and a rural Vietnam vet.
Oh, okay.
That, you know, they were in the coffee shop, and they were talking about the paintings, I guess, and I don't know if it was one in particular or what, but they
Gotcha.
yeah, they butted heads on it. Because like some of the paintings are about the militarization of Indian country, and I think the painting, I guess that it would have been, there was a large painting I did called Natural Resource Management, and it featured like a big grasshopper oil pump, and it's Indians like wearing suits and war bonnets, but with gas masks and holding briefcases. And then on the one of the skyscrapers in the background was a George Bush's face was on there. So I'm thinking it was that one because it was kind of a stab at the conservative party.
Right. Well, at one point you got pretty involved with some different youth organizations too. How did your art and that kind of work come together?
I think when after my first solo exhibit, I was really trying to get I was trying to figure out how much my paintings would be worth, like what to charge, and an agent that I had at the time suggested donating work and then seeing what the paintings go for in auction and see what people will pay for it then, and kind of basing it on that. And so I kind of selected native organizations in the area, and even some non-native organizations, but and then I think from that kind of introduction to philanthropy, I started kind of realizing the work that they're doing, and then also my work I did with the ACEs, and then just seeing firsthand from traveling as a singer to different communities, and for powwows, and seeing what's the issues that our youth were facing, and all that really started getting to me a bit more, and then I was actually asked to serve on the board of directors at the Denver Indian Center, and I think it was like 2004, and I served on their board for just my term, and really got introduced to the world of nonprofit work, and the challenges they face, and the need for those programs, and you got to see like the firsthand like the impact those programs would have, and the challenges that they face, and then the consequences if the funding wasn't met, if those programs weren't there, what that would mean. And it really opened my eyes. So at that point I shifted gears, and I quit. I was still doing like manual. I was working as a screen printer and serving on this board, and then I realized I wanted to change and actually work in nonprofit. So I got a job at the American Indian College Fund, and started working with them while still serving on the board, and then kind of got the from a leadership role, being on the board, to working within the nonprofit, and felt like I had a good foundation. And my cousin Crystal Echo-Hawk and I were talking quite a bit about the needs that our youth have and how they're not being met, and so we co-founded Envision in 2006, and focused on bringing multimedia art platforms to Native youth, working in terms of suicide prevention and substance abuse prevention, stuff like that. And that just kind of went from there, and the Envision kind of grew pretty quickly, and then kind of found a foundation, just working with a few specific tribes. I wanted to continue working with more tribes, and more youth. So we shifted management over. At one point I was the executive director of Envision, and and that was all 100% unpaid, so it's kind of funny having a title. I guess that was the one perk out of it, but that just meant I was doing most of the work, and so, but we shifted it over, and gave the leadership over to a couple other artists in the collective, and then I just kind of continued doing my own thing on my own path, and kind of focused on the art therapy aspect of
and
workshops.
And began doing live painting, right? That was a part of it. How did you sort of find that?
It came from conversations with some of my family members. I'd heard growing up about like our winter months, like when we'd be in our earth lodges, and how they'd pass the time, and they'd have like hand games and all these social events, but then they'd also have times when they'd have an artist there, and like people would gather, and the artist would kind of serve as the entertainment, and tell stories or even jokes and stuff, but then the artist would talk to the assembled audience and determine like some significant events that happened the previous year, and then the artist would talk to each person, and by doing that would get like the complete picture of that piece of history, and then they would record it on a stretched hide, like a buffalo hide or deer hide, and they'd have like a young woman that she would have a stretched buckskin, and it was like white, but it'd be stretched tight, and she'd reflect the light of the fire onto the artist's working space. And what's cool about that is that my cousin Crystal, that became her Indian name, because they said that's what she does, is she reflects the light onto other people and helps them to get their accomplish their work and stuff. So I thought it was cool. But anyway, so we did a fundraising event for Pawnee Nation College, which then was in its infancy, and Comanche Nation College down in Oklahoma City, and I promised to donate some work for the silent auction, and I didn't have it with me, and then I had the idea of like, well, what if I do a live painting on the spot with the entertainment, and we had like some DJs and stuff like that, and then we'll auction the painting, and it was a complete rush for me, it was just kind of spur of the moment, and I had no idea if I could do it or not, and because I didn't know how quick I could work, but it ended up like working pretty well, and like people were really receptive to it, and I had the DJ wear a gas mask. I'd bought a few gas masks at a surplus store, and then I put war paint on it and painted it up, and then, so I had the DJ put it on during a break. So I put that on, and I put my roach and eagle feathers on him, and then I said, all right, when I come out and take the stage, you come out next. And so anyways, I went and put my easel up there, and it was I want to say it was like 48 inches by 48 inches, like pretty good sized canvas, and then up on stage, and then he came out and he started just, the speakers were up, and he started scratching, and the music dropped, and then people started coming up, and it was just cool looking over my shoulder, and just seeing everybody, their minds just were blown, like seeing this DJ, this Indian DJ up there with the gas mask on with war paint, and like just saw like the wave like of phones coming out, and people taking pictures, and I don't know, I just fell in love with it, instantly, like that feeling that you can only get like if you're there in the audience to witness like the art happen, and so it was like a big rush for me, and it made me feel like a rock star, even though I'm not musically inclined, and it just kind of went from there, and I was looking for opportunities to paint. At first it was just kind of as a stage piece, like with some of these guys, these DJs and MCs, and I just did it for fun, because I had a paying job, and but eventually, I just kind of I started perfecting it and realizing, that I could do more with it. So I looked back to those conversations about our ancestors, and wondered if I'd be able to do that, like the way they did it. And so I can't remember the first time. It was at a youth conference up in Spokane, Washington, and it was I'm trying to remember the name of their group, but it was called the Native Project. But anyways, it was area tribes sent their youth, and there were 377 kids in the audience, and I was like, you know, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now. And I had them, you know, ask questions and I had them raise their hands, and then I had them go through, like, the question that really sticks out in my mind is that I asked them, you know, how many of you, you know, have somebody in your family that, you know, has diabetes, and like a lot of hands went up. And then asked, you know, how many of you are fluent in your language, and only a handful of hands went up. And then I asked how many of you have somebody in your family that is an alcoholic, and every single hand went up in the audience, and it was kind of heart-wrenching. And at that point I turned around and said, I'm going to start painting, and, you know, I want you guys to go through and just introduce yourself to me and inspire me to paint, you know. And so anyways, the very first kid that took the mic said, he said, I'm 12 years old and I already have a problem with alcohol. And he said, you know, my parents are both alcoholics, and my older siblings are alcoholics, and I've already started, you know, drinking, you know, and I'm only 12. And then he just went on. It was really brave of him, you know, and, but it set the tone. And then when he passed the microphone, you know, all these other kids just opened up, and I think it made me realize that these kids from different tribes and different communities saw some synergy there. They saw that they weren't the only ones facing these problems, and in that sense, I saw, like, you know, some doors opening, healing begin. And when I was painting, I was trying not to cry because these kids were being so raw and, like, honest and open, and, you know, they talked about sexual abuse and, you know, just the full gamut. Like,
wow.
There were no filters at all. And you know, Indian kids are typically really shy, you know, especially in a public setting. These kids are, you know, it was a safe place, you know. And so I painted this like toddler, Indian toddler, kind of floating, and I was holding up a bottle of whiskey, and then on that bottle of whiskey there was a nipple on it, and that baby was, like, you know, about to drink it, you know. And then we had toward the end I said, well, what words do you want on this painting? And they said, look, you know, put FAS on there, you know, fetal alcohol syndrome. So I put FAS, and then they said, but instead of fetal alcohol syndrome, make it stand for futures are stolen. So, like, man, it was really intense and powerful. And I think from that experience that it helped me to refine, like, you know, what I could do with the audience. And, you know, so now it's you know, kind of like it's more natural for me to, like, I can contain my emotions more, you know, when I'm up there. But what's really kind of sad, or, you know, kind of sobering, is that, you know, like, a lot of these communities that I visit, you know, they have those same issues, like, from community to community. And so now I try to focus on having the audience, like, brainstorm you know, tactics to, you know, overcome those obstacles, and then try to focus on that, you know, to try to make a visual action plan for them. And so it's been really
so it'll carry on. That work will carry on.
Yeah. So it's been you know, pretty good experience, you know. Like, it's given me a lot. So when I come home and I'm in the studio, like, and I don't have the audience there, I still have their sentiments and their experiences with me, and I still carry, you know, those prayers for them when I do my studio work, and I can spend, you know, several months on a canvas. Like, I still, you know, have that with me. So, it's pretty intense at times, but it's rewarding.
Powerful stuff. Have you done any murals at all?
Yeah, I've done a few. Done one in Citizen Potawatomi at their youth center, and Jasha, my wife, actually helped me with that. We did it in 3 days, I think, and it was kind of a fun piece. I actually relied on my original series of work, like that style. And
I see.
Created this mural, so it's kind of more fluid and just kind of a, you know, spiritual mural. Featured, like, this big giant face and this kind of ribbon-like hair, and, you know, kind of stars woven throughout it. And then I've done murals up in like at private residences up in like Shakopee up in Minnesota, and then a mural in at the Yakama Nation tribal school.
Oh, cool.
And, that was a fun one because it was like interactive with the students there, you know, so they were around when I was, you know, working on the mural. And so I've done quite a few. And then I did, and I'll never do it again because it was, well, I don't want to say that because it was fun, but it was really difficult. But I had a show at Wyden and Kennedy, their headquarters in Portland, Oregon, and they're like advertising like moguls, like they came up with "Just Do It," you know, the Nike slogan and all that. But they gave me a solo exhibition in their headquarters, and they're asking, you know, what do you want for the opening reception? And I was kind of being a smartass, and I said, you know, I want a full-scale teepee, and because it was a big space, you know, so I want a full-scale teepee, you know, with blank canvas, and I want a satellite dish on the top, you know, and then for the opening reception, I'll paint, do live art all around the teepee, you know, paint the teepee. Anyways, they made it happen, so I had to do it.
Wow, and that's a major job to do a teepee.
So it was pretty cool, but it was just the images of, you know, seeing that satellite dish up there, because I think I'd painted it before, and but seeing it really like there physically, it was a poetic image, and but they took it a step further and they put a like a rug inside the teepee and like a TV that just had static on, and like a toaster oven. So it was pretty cool, but yeah, it was a challenge to do live art. But it was like, you know, mural kind of size on all the way around that teepee.
Absolutely. So tell us about your contract with Nike, because now you've been working with them for quite a while.
Yeah, they actually contacted me in, I want to say 2009, and invited me to come up to their world headquarters in Portland or in Beaverton, Oregon, and just to do you know, live art for their Native American Heritage Month. And I was invited by the GM of Native Business, Sam McCracken, and then also on behalf of the Native American Employee Network at Nike. And so when I went up there, they actually gave me a tour, and at that point I hadn't really heard much about the Nike N7 line, which is a line you know, inspired by you know, Native American culture and to benefit Native American communities. And so they gave me the tour, and you know, introduced me to the line, and you know, I really fell in love with it. You know, like I was always into Nikes and Jordans back, you know, in high school, and I'd actually screen printed, you know, a Nike logo on leather, and made a drumstick out of it. You know, so I had a Nike, the swoosh, and then instead of just do it, I changed it and said just be. And so it was, but at that time I was actually working a lot in the skateboarding community and designing decks, and with a company called Native Skates out of Adrian, Michigan, and they had partnered with Vans, and they were doing Pendleton Vans, and then they had asked for some like prototypes of, you know, my art, custom shoes, and so I was actually doing that when Nike called, and so I was like, man, what's up with this?
Wow,
and these different shoe
corporate.
companies, yeah. And but anyways, they introduced me to the line up there, and then they said that they requested that when I do my live painting to do a portrait of Mark Parker, who's the Nike CEO and president, and so, you know, they asked, you know, they were appreciative of Mark's engagement with the Nike N7 line, and they just wanted to honor him. So I did a portrait of him with a headdress, and then I wrote, like, in graffiti writing, "Agent of Change," you know. And, but you know, from that experience, like after that performance or whatever, they said that their motivating reason for bringing me up there was actually to talk to me about coming on to possibly help design some of this stuff. And I guess they had, you know, researched at one point broke into a couple research teams after they decided they wanted to work with a native artist, and I was just fortunate enough that when they reconvened, my name was at the top of their list, you know, and so, you know, just kind of fell into my lap, and but, you know, I had you know, my reservations at first because I'd heard you know, Nike and, like, you know, their questionable sweatshop, you know, labor practices and stuff. So, but when I was there, I realized, you know, like, you know, that they had changed those practices by then, and but their commitment to the Native American community was legitimate, you know, and like I was pleased to see that the staff within that line, you know, was a native staff and native managed, and it spoke volumes that they wanted to work with a native artist, and they didn't want to hire me as an employee. They just wanted to, you know, contract with me, and I thought that was awesome, you know, that they, you know, respected that, and just seeing, like, the impact that the line had already, like their philosophies were adopted into the corporation of Nike, that like, you know, the native philosophy of only using what you need translated into their manufacturing. And so, like, before they would you know, cut like 2 feet of material when they only needed, like, you know, 15 inches of material, and so by doing that, by only using what they needed, they were able to reduce their annual waste, manufacturing waste, by several, like, hundreds of tons. And they said it was enough, like, what they had cut out from their, you know, from their waste was, they said if you filled dump trucks completely up, they would run bumper to bumper from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. And by changing their manufacturing practices to, like, our native philosophy, it, like, cut out all that waste. And then some of the materials that they were using, like, for some of the early windbreakers, were made from, like, 98% recycled water bottles. And so they were looking at, like, reducing their footprint and you know, honoring our native philosophies. And so it really appealed to me. But then what appealed to me most was that the proceeds from the line go into the N7 fund, which in turn distributes that money back into Indian country to fund youth programs, you know, giving them access to sport, and, like, combating like type 2 diabetes and youth obesity and stuff like that. So it really, you know, appealed to me as a way to, you know, I guess spoke to my you know, philanthropic heart, you know, like, we'll be able to honor our culture. I'll be able to make some, you know, art, or put my art as an artist. It was a huge opportunity, and but then being able to, just knowing that it was, you know, bringing our community up in a number of ways, it really spoke to me. And then so I signed with them, I think, in 2010, and started immediately designing with them. And like, from once the designs are complete and everything, usually takes 10 to 12 months for it to actually hit the shelves. And so you know, wrapped up my designs, and then in 2010, and right before my first line launched in 2011, Nike officially bought the N7 line, so it became an official line of Nike. And then they started putting their resources into the line, and to help it develop and grow. And so it was really cool. We actually, I think, you know, did a really amazing job. Like, the first launch parties, like, you know, like, they were sold out, like, within the day, you know. And, different sites. And since then, you know, we've been able to partner with like Kevin Durant from Oklahoma City Thunder, and then also with Jordan, and releasing some, you know, Nike and 7 Jordan shoes and apparel and stuff. And so it keeps every year, or every season, we're able to continue to grow and get bigger. And then as a result of that, we've been able to put you know, I think, like, over $3 million back into Indian country in the last couple of years. You know? So it's been really amazing to see that. And, you know, also, you know, as part of that, we're highlighting our native professional athletes and like giving them extra exposure, and which is huge because now we're starting to see these high school students, and I identify with that, myself. I look back to that critical time, where I made that decision, and a huge part of me making that decision to drop out of basketball was because then I didn't see any possibilities after or beyond college, and so I didn't think, I'm Indian and that's, I'll only go so far, so I'm gonna go this other way. But now we're starting to see, that there are possibilities beyond that, and there's native WNBA players out there, that are on the all-star team, and native football players that are on, starting quarterbacks on professional, NFL teams, and just starting to grow. That list is getting bigger and bigger, and so it's cool seeing that. And then some of the communities that the N7 Fund has partnered with, starting to see just marked improvements, and like reduction of youth obesity, reduction of type 2 diabetes, and improvements on school attendance and grades, and suicide rates dropping. And it's not a cure-all by any means, but it's cool being able to see that influence and just knowing that that line has that kind of potential, and so it's cool that it's growing, just for that reason alone for me. But yeah, it's been exciting to see.
That's wonderful. So switching to your progress and techniques, you mostly use acrylic, is that right? Mostly acrylic on canvas for your studio work.
Yeah.
How important is sketching to you when you're in the studio, not live painting?
It's really important to me. Like I'm always kind of a nerd about it. Like I research as much as I can about, like, before I even sketch, and I'll read as much as I can about whatever idea I have, and then I'll start compiling information, and then once I feel like I'm able to talk intelligently about whatever I'm going to paint, then I feel like I'm able to start sketching, and I'll do traditional like sketches in a sketchbook, and then lately I've been coupling that with doing digital sketching, like digital compositions, and kind of playing with imagery on the computer, and then manipulating it, and then doing sketches based off of that. And then sometimes I'll do like smaller proof paintings on paper, or I'll use like watercolor and inks, and then,
preliminary.
Yeah, and then once I feel comfortable with it, then I'll translate it up onto canvas and go from there. So it's and then when it's part of a series, it's like I kind of, the way I look at it is, I think it's my creative writing background, but I look at them as chapters to a book, and so I want to, like, I'll actually draft my my narrative, my artist statement about the series before I even start the series, because then I'll always look back on it, and every painting I'm about to do, I see, compare it to that statement, and if it doesn't match up, I'll back burner it, because I want the body to be cohesive and to tell as much of the story as possible. And then so it's do a lot of writing and a lot of introspection, and then my sketches, and then I have fun with it. I'll do sometimes like collage work, or just trying to frame the idea in different ways, before I actually do it. And sometimes it results in me like working on music as well, like on my computer, like digital or electronic, like dance music, or just trying to harness that creativity. And it doesn't always go to canvas. Sometimes it's another project, or it's a sound, or a song or something like that'll inspire me, and then I'll play that when I actually do get on canvas.
While you're working.
Yeah.
So I know you travel quite a bit, but when you are home, what's your creative routine?
A lot of times it's like I tend to veg out quite a bit, and like I'll ice my back, and return from a trip, and then it's usually a couple days before I can do anything creative. Like, I get really drained, from those trips, because it's not just the time where I'm actually painting, but it's like the whole experience of visiting a community and kind of tapping into what they're doing in their communities, and like meeting people and networking, and then the actual traveling itself. And so I kind of will go through periods where when I'm home, I'm just I'm home, and then but when I get that this kind of overwhelming feeling that I need to create, and I tend to work at night. So I'll be just regular guy, dad in the daytime, and then at night, once the kids are tucked in and asleep, then I'll get into it, and I'll paint, and sometimes all through the night until the sun comes up, and but at the same time, Jason and I always have these amazing conversations, where I'm sometimes we'll be taking notes, but I'm always taking it in, and we're always we're really active in our community, and working on trying to get Indigenous Peoples Day recognized in Oklahoma City, and participating in our just our community, and then so there's always these areas that pop up where I'm thinking, like, how could I paint that, how could I turn that into something. And some usually even though I might not be creating art, I'm absorbing and sponging it in, and then I have to find the time to squeeze myself and let it come out.
Right. Well, just looking back on your career so far, what's been a high point for you?
Man, I think it's, the N7 stuff is real cool. But I think my solo exhibit at the Field Museum in Chicago has been my biggest exhibit to date. And it's it was amazing. Worked with a big staff there and developed the show. And it was supposed to be up for, I think, 1 year, and then they ended up extending it by a second year, and it, received a lot of visits. I can't remember the final estimation on how many people saw it, but it was like over 1 million people saw the exhibit, and
that's fantastic.
It was really cool, just that whole opportunity.
It was Modern Day Warrior. Was that the subtitle?
Right.
Bunky Echo-Hawk. Yeah, in 2013.
Yeah.
How many pieces did you do total?
Oh, geez. I want to say we had 22 pieces altogether for the exhibit. And the premise of it is they had me come in and select objects from their archives to exhibit. So I basically co-curated the exhibit with the curator of North American anthropology, and so I got to go in and select, objects from my ancestors, and on both sides, which was cool.
Wow.
On my mom's side and my dad's side, and I selected probably 60 objects, and then we had to pare it down, and then they wanted me to create original artwork based on my work with those objects from the collection. So I created a handful of paintings specifically for that exhibit, and then they wanted my drumstick that I mentioned earlier with the Nike on it, and then some of my Nike N7 stuff, and then my painter's pants. Actually accessioned a pair of my pants, a pair of my shoes, and a T-shirt into their permanent collection, and so it's pretty neat.
That is
seeing them working, the museum staff that had the white gloves on, and they delicately straightening my pants out to photograph it and catalog it, and I'm sitting there thinking, man, did I wash those before I gave them to him? But yeah, it was really cool, being able to kind of bridge the gap between how our ancestors lived then to how we are today as a people, and what things are what aspects of that life have adapted, and what aspects have been forgotten or put away. So it was really a fun exhibit to be a part of, and it actually recently came down and it moved over to a Trickster Gallery in Schaumburg, Illinois. And it's been up there for a couple months. And I'm not sure what's happening with it after that, but a lot of the paintings that were in there are from various collections, private collections, and so I'm sure those people are, chomping at the bit to get their
Ready
work
to have their work back.
Yeah.
What's been a low point for you in your career so far?
Man, it's I think there's low points. That's a good question. I don't know. It's challenging at times, financially, to make it, because it's not a steady paycheck, every 2 weeks and so there's definitely challenges there. There's it's like feast or famine sometimes, and I think a low part for me is, and it goes even back to my creative writing days, but when you send out stuff for publications and you get those rejection letters, but at this point in my career, it's like getting rejection letters for grants or for fellowship awards and stuff like that, and I keep thinking like I could be doing so much more if I had those resources to do so, and so I think that those are definitely the low points, I think, but so far I've been trying to move. The way I view it is like spiraling up. So there's times where like you'll from where I started, like you'll spiral around, and you might be a little bit higher than where you started, but you're still up a little bit further. But yeah, there's definitely some times, and I'm grateful that my low points aren't super low, but aside from what I mentioned earlier, the things that happened to me as a kid, I think that laid a foundation to who I am today. And I think if there was like the lowest point, it's the time after I had remembered that stuff and became consciously aware of what had happened to me, that where I stopped completely. And I think as far as my writing goes, that that's been on hold for quite a while, and I'm I talk with Jasha quite a bit about wanting to get back into writing, and I feel like I still identify myself as a writer even though I'm not writing. So I think that's been a continual low point for me as far as that aspect of my creative career. So that's definitely something that I want to break out of that, fly on out of there,
Well, look forward to seeing some more writing too. We'll pause for a minute and take a look at a couple of your pictures.
Oh, okay.
All right, Bunky, would you like to talk about this painting?
Yeah, this is a portrait that I had made of John Trudell, and he was an amazing
Oh my gosh, okay.
leader, that we just civil rights leader that we recently lost, and he was a guy that I met quite a bit as a young person, and he came through at Institute of American Indian Arts, and then but I'd been working with him in the recent years, on some activists of the Save Hickory Ground, protecting a sacred site with some of my Creek friends. And anyways, his family notified us, that he was about to make his journey, and some of my friends here were driving out to California to see him, but I was up in Minnesota performing, and couldn't make the trip with them. So when I got home, I painted this. Actually, I asked his family to select some images and to do a portrait of him. And so this is one of the images. It's just one of his characters from a movie, Thunderheart. But anyways, I painted it all night, and then I sent it on to him at dawn, and then posted it, and he got to see it, and he got to see the video I made, like a time-lapse video of me painting it. And then it really blew up that day, and I think there were like 70,000 views of it, you know, and a lot of people sharing it, reposting it, and then of course he passed away that night, I guess, you know, or early that next morning. And so anyways, it's, you know, it was real special to me, you know, and getting to see him, or just knowing that he got to see it, or got to know that I was thinking of him, you know, at that time. But yeah, so that's what this one is, just kind of paying homage to him.
That's wonderful. And how about this piece?
This one is Maria Tall Chief, and you know, she was of course a famed prima ballerina, you know, from the Osage people, and I painted it, you know, because I wanted to, you know, help share her story, you know, and you know, the inspiration she continues to impart, you know, upon young dancers. And the image I based it off of was from a publication in Life magazine, and they'd photographed her, and it was kind of a candid shot, I guess, but she had come back to Oklahoma after, you know, traveling around, kind of making a name for herself, and made it back to Osage country, and the mayor and like the tribal leadership were there, and then I believe the governor of Oklahoma was there, and they declared it Maria Tall Chief Day, and during that welcoming ceremony they placed a war bonnet on her, and so I think she's kind of, you know, fidgeting with that, and they snapped a candid black and white photo that was beautiful, and so I just wanted to kind of preserve her legacy, I guess, and it was kind of as a paying homage to her, you know, and she when she passed, you know, just to help ensure that we remember, you know, her life and, you know, her contributions.
Right. Nice colors. Okay, and so we're looking at shoes.
Yeah, these are the Nike N7 Air Max Destinies that came out in 2011, and these are the first shoes that or from my first line that I collaborated on with Nike, Nike N7. And what blows me away about it is they, you know, it did the you know, colors, like kind of selected the colors, and it was in my mind it was just going to be like that, but at the last minute it was a surprise. They put this tag on here.
That's such a great touch.
And it blew me away because it has the image of, you know, my painting and the image that was on the t-shirts.
Right.
Embroidered here, little stars and stuff. But it has my artist signature on it, you know.
Oh,
so,
I just now saw that.
Yeah, so it's nuts, you know, like, you know.
A little closer here.
Michael Jordan has his own shoes, and Kobe has his own, KD, and Bunky Echo-Hawk.
That's right. You made it to the pros after all. Right. And so, do you have a lot of shoes?
I have way too many shoes, and I had to get rid of some, you know. But I think half the closet's my shoes.
Was that part of your contract with Nike?
It was, you know, in the beginning, they, you know, there was half of my my contract was paid out in a lump sum, like cash, and then the other half was put in like a credit line, so I could go to, you know, these Nike stores and, you know, basically, you know, shop, and then give them that number and head out. So it was like a shopping spree. And it was like that for the first couple of years, but then they got switched around, and so now I have to. Basically, Nike is my client now, and I'm like the, you know, a vendor, I guess, but I have to pay like full price for everything now.
Oh, so not so many presents for people now.
Yeah, my family stopped getting Nike stuff.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Bunky.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun.